I'm Rashad.
I'm Aman.
Alexander.
Yep.
Okay.
No, Alex, but yeah.
So question one for you
Okay.
is, so obviously we know you're a freelance journalist.
Okay.
We want to know a bit more about that. Like, what does that mean? So what does a freelance journalist do compared to someone who works for a company like the BBC on a contract? So what's the difference?
Right. Well, you mean if you're a salaried worker for the BBC? I mean, the main difference is that you're not actually employed by anyone. You sort of have clients that you find yourself generally, and you'll be paid usually per job or per project. Sometimes people will get, I forgot the word, but basically a sort of an arrangement where they may be working for a company for a few months, but they have other clients as well. And so I've written just individual articles for publications or worked on longer projects. So I largely do health writing now, and I've done a lot of work for the Economist Intelligence Unit. So I do some longer term projects for them.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And as a freelance journalist, what happens during a typical day of work?
Typical day, usually I do have projects I'm already working on. I mean, there are freelancers who spend their typical day just trying to pitch stories to an editor, which when you're first starting out, that's often what you have to do. And it can be very difficult because you have to do a lot of research, on a story that you might want to write, and then say, look, I'm interested in writing this. And the editor will either say, that's great, or, we already have someone working on something like that, or I'm not interested. And then you sometimes might have done that work for kind of nothing, but, you sort of may try to pitch it to another publication. But in my case, I usually will catch up on the news, and I will sometimes be doing interviews with people. So if I'm, writing a health report, I might be doing an interview. I might be editing a draft of a report I've done, or if I'm, just doing an article, just sort of putting an article together like that. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
What would you say is the most rewarding element of your job?
The most rewarding element is the fact that I'm doing something different every day. It's never the same thing day after day, which is fun. And I've also worked as a foreign journalist in Russia, so that was exciting because I got to travel a lot for that. And obviously, I had to use a different language, which was challenging. So I think all of those things have been rewarding. Just the variety of it all, I think.
Yeah, thank you. Also, what sparked your interest, initially, to do journalism?
I always liked writing, and I did a little bit of journalism when I was in school, like you do, and then I started working for my student newspaper when I was at university. So that was what really sort of got me interested, because I was probably doing it 2 or 3 afternoons a week, just covering stories and being out and sort of running around like that. So that was I think that's what really got me interested in it.
Yeah. Also, what route would you say you took to get into journalism, and did that route actually matter in the end?
I took a more unusual route, I think, because I was interested in working abroad, and often, the old route used to be you would work your way through a lot of little papers and then work up to a bigger paper, and then they'd send you somewhere. But by the time I sort of got into journalism, there were more opportunities, because there were I spoke some Russian, and Russia had just opened up, and a lot of people were just going there and starting to sort of work for. There was an English language daily newspaper, so I did that. And it was much easier actually to get jobs there. I mean, I actually did come back to the States before getting a salary job with Dow Jones Newswires, which is a financial newswire. But there were people who actually just went to a country they were interested in and started working as a stringer, as a freelancer for publications, and then worked their way into jobs that way. So that's maybe a more unusual route, but it worked for me. But I think there are lots of ways of getting into journalism, depending on what you're interested in. But it's good to play up. If you have a specialty, that's often the best way of getting in. If you're doing economics and you can write about economic topics, there are, sometimes specific internships that are directed along those lines. And the same with science, if you're, so it helps if you have a particular, either a language or a particular area, to get in. But you can also just start writing for your local publication, or your university publication when you're there.
Yeah. Also, I think you mentioned earlier about an expedition in Russia. I was
Yes.
intrigued about what happened there.
Well, I was working, I went there on 2 occasions. I was there working for a small educational organization, and I started freelancing for the Moscow Times, which was this English language daily. And I just did sort of almost like travel pieces for, it had a large expat audience. And so I sort of would go to places around Moscow and write about them. But then when I came back with Dow Jones, I was covering the finance ministry and I'd been trained to do some of the financial stuff in New York when I first started working for them. And so because I had the language, they sent me over. And so I was covering the finance ministry and the central bank but also traveling around to other parts of the country. And I traveled to Ukraine and wrote about their economy and their sort of agricultural development, that type of thing. So.
Okay, and then like other than our journalism club, what do you think students could do to get involved in journalism?
If you can find even local publications that might take you on, I'm not, even though it's a small paper, I'm not sure if something like the Post offers any kind of internships or even opportunities to write, but that's probably the best way of going about it. Find or even start a publication, at the high school. And certainly when you get into university, there will be quite a few publications normally at your average university, and just get as many, because you need to have as probably examples of your writing that have been published that you can show to a prospective employer. So wherever you can get them is useful. You can, everyone starts somewhere. So even if they're a little piece, it's something that can show future employers how you write and how you cover things, and what you sort of how you think about a story is useful. I'm sure Mr. Kelsey's teaching you the basics about how you write about a story and report it. But
also, could you tell us about your favorite moment in your career, maybe?
My favorite moment in my career, I did a really interesting trip when I was living in Russia. I did a really interesting trip down to Georgia for about 3 or 4 days, which is one of the other former Soviet republics, and it's a really beautiful place, but it was even less developed than Russia at that point. And so I had this very hectic several days where I was probably doing about 12 hours work a day, but it was really interesting because I was writing both about the economy, which wasn't doing particularly well at the time, and the wine industry there, which was just getting kind of restarted after kind of plateauing during the Soviet period. So I traveled around. And I was going to say another experience from Russia was I got to follow a Russian member of parliament around his district for a whole weekend, which was just a weird opportunity that fell into my lap. So following him to see constituents and to visit to open a car factory. And that really gave me a kind of interesting, view of the life there. So.
Yeah. I think that's it.
Thanks for your time.
Excellent.
Very much.
Thanks very much. Well, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.